On graduation day, everyone was eagerly signing Chloe Hayes' commemorative team on a shirt. Just as I was about to leave, she pulled me aside and had me sign my name in a corner of the sleeve with a pen that was running out of ink. I squeezed the pen and forced a smile. Good luck, genius scientist. But she just stared at me, her face blank. Good luck with what? Good luck in hoping we never meet again. My smile vanished, and the final flicker of my fantasy died out completely. 8 years later, I saw Chloe on television. She had truly become a genius scientist. During a segment filmed at her home, the host happened to open a closet and found that old T- shirt covered in signatures. The host held up the spot over the heart where my name was written, showing it to the camera and asking with a smile what it symbolized to her. On the screen, Chloe lowered her gaze and said just one word: light. Watching the interview, I was utterly stunned. After all, I had been chasing after her since high school, and had never once earned so much as a glance. She got early admission to Caltech, so I studied relentlessly to get in, barely scraping by as the last one admitted. After graduation, she went to work at the institute, and I gave up all my own career opportunities to become her assistant, managing her daily life and shielding her from social engagements she despised. When she was kidnapped, I went in after her alone, making myself a target for the criminals. After we were rescued, she finally said with a sigh of relief, "We should find a time to see our parents and set a wedding date." In that moment, I could clearly see the guilt in Chloe's eyes, but I shamelessly accepted this proposal born of obligation, all for the chance to stay by her side forever. I couldn't lie to myself anymore after the first time I heard her say the name Noah Evans. She was looking at a set of data he had completely messed up, yet a faint smile touched her lips. Noah mixed up the sample order again, she said, her tone holding no blame, only a sort of fond exasperation. I even saw Noah lean over and kiss Chloe on the cheek in the lab. This was the same Chloe who would instantly freeze and pull away if my fingertips so much as brushed against hers. Yet now, she only blushed and didn't push him away. It was then I understood that when Chloe truly liked someone, she lost all her rigid principles, just like any flustered teenager. But I never wanted to be just her husband. I wanted her love. But perhaps I would never get that chance in this lifetime. So I chose to let them be happy. 2 weeks before the wedding, I handed my application to my senior colleague. Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller, I'm volunteering for a transfer to the Mojave branch. Please add my name to the list. Dr. Miller looked up completely stunned. Ethan, aren't you and Chloe getting married next month? We all know you followed her to the institute. You're so close to finally making it work. And now you want to go to the Mojave. I swallowed the lump in my throat and cut off her kind advice. Please, just sign off on it. As I left the administration building, the large outdoor screen was broadcasting a live international summit. The camera zoomed in on Noah, whispering in Chloe's ear. She tilted her head up to listen, their faces inches apart, and she looked completely at ease. This was the woman who made me maintain a 10-foot distance, even when I was just giving a work report. Yet, here she was letting another man's breath grace her skin. I let out a bitter laugh and went back to our apartment, the one that was supposed to be our marital home. I carefully packed everything that was mine and scheduled a moving service. Just as I finished, my phone lit up with a notification. My transfer request to the Mojave branch had been approved. At almost the same moment, and a message from Chloe arrived. Flight C-1837 lands in Pasadena at 8 p.m. tomorrow. Pick me up. I stared at the message for a long time before picking up my phone and calmly typing it to Word reply. I can't. I worked fast. Within a day, every trace of me was gone from the apartment. When the realtor brought a potential buyer, she remarked that it barely looked lived in. It felt fitting, as if all my years of effort had failed to leave a single mark on Chloe's life. Mr. Carter, are you sure about this price? The realtor asked. For this location and the custom work, you're taking a huge loss. I nodded, signing the listing agreement. I'm sure. The faster it sells, the better. The institute required me to stay for 2 more weeks to hand over my work. The day Chloe and Noah returned, I was in the lab organizing data. My phone screen lit up with a message from Chloe. Landed. In the car. Before, those words would have made me drop everything to call her. Now I just silenced my phone and went back to my work. The institute held a small welcome dinner for a celebrated return of Chloe and Noah. I arrived late and took a seat in a quiet corner. By the time I got there, the dinner was in full swing, with Chloe and Noah seated next to each other at the head of the table as the clear guests of honor. Noah was telling a lively story about the summit, and the table erupted in laughter. Speaking of which, yesterday was a total disaster, Noah said, suddenly changing the subject. His eyes found me in the corner. Our flight was late, and it was pouring rain. Chloe and I couldn't get a cab for ages, and our luggage got soaked. Ethan, I thought you always handled the airport pickups. What happened this time? Instantly, all eyes at the table turned to me, full of curiosity. I put down my fork and met Noah's. Arranging transportation is not part of my official duties. The smile on Noah's face faltered. From her seat at the head of the table, Chloe finally looked at me. Her face was impassive, but I caught the flicker of surprise in her eyes. Of course, she was used to it. She was used to me handling every little detail, to me always appearing whenever she needed anything. I was like air, unapaidable and present, but whose absence creates a subtle discomfort. The rest of the dinner passed in a strange atmosphere, as people were leaving. Chloe stopped me at the end of the hall. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. I replied, "What do you mean?" Chloe said, "Noah didn't mean anything by it." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "His expertise was a great help at the summit. You're my personal assistant. These are the kinds of small things you're supposed to handle." I knew what she was thinking. She thought I was having a petty fit over Noah and had decided to humiliate her in front of everyone. I took a deep breath and finally said the words I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. "Chloe, I'm calling off the engagement." Her brow furrowed. "What did you just say?" Just as she stood there, stunned, Noah came running down the hall. "Chloe, there's a problem with sample 3. She immediately turned to him. "What is it?" Noah grabbed her wrist. "The threshold values are off the charts. You need to see this now." She glanced back at me, her voice calm. "This data is urgent. We'll talk after I've dealt with it." Without giving me a chance to reply, she hurried away with Noah. I watched them go, my face a blank mask. Where was she? I wasn't surprised. Her talk later almost always meant talk never. She never cared about the wedding arrangements anyway. Her only responsibility was to be the bride. I had told her my duty was done. I had already listed the apartment for sale, and I'd given up my old rental months ago. I suddenly realized I had nowhere to go. Half an hour later, I found myself standing at my parents' front door. My mother opened the door, her face lighting up in a practiced welcoming smile. "Ethan, what a surprise. Where's Chloe? Didn't she come with you?" I pushed past her into the apartment. "She's not here," I said flatly. In the living room, my father and my brother Leo were sprawled on the couch watching TV, their feet on the coffee table. My dad turned, peering over my shoulder. "Where's Dr. Hayes? Is she parking the car?" I said quietly. "We broke up." My father shot up and kicked the glass coffee table, sending it crashing over. He pointed a finger in my face, his voice roaring. "Chloe Hayes. Do you have any idea who she is? People would kill to be in your position, and you just throw it away." Leo, still lounging with his legs crossed, chimed in with a sneer. "Come on, bro. She's drive. Hayes. She's surrounded by geniuses. I heard about that guy, Noah Evans at the Institute. Her, mentor's son. Now that's a power couple." He scoffed, looking me up and down. "You were lucky she even looked at you. If you had any sense, you would have just sucked it up and been grateful. Just apologize by her or something nice. Now that you've screwed this up, where am I supposed to get the money for my down payment? You're ruining my life." This was my family, a bottomless pit that consumed most of every dollar I ever earned. Leo's tuition for a mediocre college, my parents' endless requests for their retirement fund, the down payment on their new house. I paid for it all almost numbly while still clinging to a pathetic sliver of hope. The moment Chloe agreed to marry me, their attitude changed overnight. The calls became more frequent, their voices warmer. They even started asking if I was working too hard. I was naive enough to think it was a delayed show of affection, that they had finally started to value me. Now that illusion was shattered, leaving only the bloody truth. They never cared about me, Ethan Carter. They only cared about what they could get. From my connection to Chloe Hayes, I said nothing more, grabbed the suitcase I'd left by the door, and walked out. I got a key to a temporary dorm from the Institute's housing office. It was a corner room on the top floor, but it would do for the next 2 weeks. I was carrying a heavy cardboard box up the stairs when I nearly ran into Chloe and Noah coming down. Noah was holding a folder, laughing about something with Chloe, and he almost walked right into me. "Whoa there," he said, steadying the box as it slipped in my arms. "Ethan, what's all this? That looks heavy. Let me give you a hand." His smile was easy and his tone was friendly. I instinctively tightened my grip, shifting to avoid his touch. "I've got it, thanks." Noah reached for it again. "Really? It's no trouble. I'm stronger than I look." But then Chloe stepped forward and took the box from me herself. Noah laughed at the sight. "Chloe, those hands are a national treasure, meant for delicate experiments. You can't be doing heavy lifting." When Chloe looked up at him, her usually cool eyes held the faintest trace of a smile. "Hardly as precious as you." Her words were quiet, but they pierced my heart like a needle. I remembered when I had just started as her assistant. I dropped a heavy stack of files, sending papers everywhere. Chloe walked right past without a word, simply telling the office manager to get me a cart. She would never say "let me help" to me, and she certainly would never use that kind of intimate, teasing tone to call me precious. Noah chuckled, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "Chloe, you're making fun of me again." Chloe didn't say anything else, just asked what you eat. I heard my own voice, dry and distant, reply the fourth. The two of them continued up the stairs with the box, chatting on, laughing easily. Noah recounted some amusing anecdote about the latest data, and Chloe would murmur a reply. Their rap were effortless and light. I followed a few paces behind him in silence. It was a familiar scene. For 10 years, I had spent most of my time walking behind her, watching her back as she moved forward. Then Noah appeared by her side, and I remained a superfluous shadow, always chasing, but never truly entering her world. When we reached room 402, I unlocked the door. The dorm was Spartan, just a bed, a desk, and a closet with a small bathroom, but it was clean. Chloe set the box down just inside the doorway and glanced around the tiny room, before her eyes landed back on me. "Why are you staying in the dorms?" I pulled my suitcase inside. "I sold the apartment," I said calmly. I paused, waiting for something. A question, maybe a flicker of surprise. But there was only a short silence behind me. Then I heard Chloe's voice, completely unchanged. "If you don't like it here, find another place. There's no need to put yourself out." I slowly straightened up and turned to face her. She didn't care. Not about the apartment. Not about why I had moved out. She probably hadn't even taken me seriously when I told her the engagement was off. Noah, standing behind Chloe, watched the exchange with a slight curve to his lips. "Well, Ethan, you get settled in. Chloe and I have to get to the data center." Chloe gave me a curt nod goodbye and left with him. I stared at the empty doorway, then down at the red indentations the box had left on my hands. Put myself out. My real hardship was years of devotion being treated as invisible. It was having my passion repaid with a bank transfer. It was nearly dying for her only to receive a proposal born of guilt. It was knowing I could never compete with someone who could make her smile, someone she considered precious. A delayed wave of bitterness surged up, catching in my throat. The next few days were quiet. I had just finished a data simulation and was packing up my things when the lab door flew open. It was my colleague. Mark, his face pale. "Ethan, hurry. Your mother and brother are at the main gate. Raising hell. Security can't handle them." My heart sank. I had cut off the money I sent them after I left home, but I didn't think they'd track me down this fast. From a distance, I could already hear my brother Leo's arrogant shouting mixed with my mother's theatrical sobs. A crowd had formed around the entrance. My mother was sitting on the ground, slapping her thighs and wailing. "It's a travesty. Her son makes something of himself and forgets his own parents." Leo was jabbing a finger in a security guard's face. "Get out of my way. I have a right to talk to my own brother." I pushed through the crowd. "Mom, Leo, what are you doing?" Leo shoved the guard aside and got in my face. "Ethan, you've got a lot of nerve. I'm 30,000 short for the down payment on my house, and you're going to give it to me today." My voice was ice. "The money I send home every month is more than enough for your expenses. I don't have a cent for your down payment." Leo shoved me hard. "Bullshit. You were throwing money around when you were with Chloe Hayes. Now that she's dumped you, you can't play the big shot anymore. Is that it? You're pathetic." I stumbled backward and fell hard, my elbow and knee cracking against the marble floor. A trickle of blood oozed from the scrapes. I looked up at the family I had sacrificed more than a decade for, my voice hard as stone. "I told you. I don't have it. Leo completely lost it. I'll teach you to be stubborn. He snatched a small metal sculpture from a nearby planter and hurled it straight at my head. The crowd screamed. In that split second, a figure moved in front of me. There was a sickening thud as the metal sculpture slammed into her back. It was Chloe. She had appeared from nowhere, shielding me completely, taking the full force of the impact. Chloe's voice cut through the chaos. Clear and sharp. Call the police. This is an assault on a federal employee and a threat to public safety. Secure the surveillance footage as evidence. So on the wail of sirens grew closer, and I watched as my mother and brother were led to a police car. I struggled to my feet and staggered. Chloe steadied me, her eyes falling on my bleeding elbow. You should go to the clinic. The way she looked down, avoiding my eyes, suddenly reminded me of her back in high school. Even then, Chloe was a bona fide genius, constantly winning academic awards, the object of every boy's admiration. I was a mediocre student with indifferent parents, the most invisible kid in our class. Our paths never should have crossed, but they did, after Leo framed me for something and my father beat me so badly I could barely walk. I sat in a corner of the field during gym class, not wanting anyone to see me limp. I was waiting for everyone to leave, when I heard footsteps returning. It was Chloe. She gently placed a bottle of antiseptic in a roll of gauze beside me. Everyone's gone, she said, her voice even, her eyes politely averted from my bruised and swollen ankle. It was pouring outside, and I could see her hair and shoulders were soaked with rain. In that moment, the frantic drumming of my heart drowned out the storm outside. I was an outcast at home and invisible at school. Yet, here was this girl, someone I felt I had no right to even admire, preserving my last shred of dignity at my lowest point. Chloe had offered me a single ray of light, and I flew toward it like a moth to a flame. I studied with a desperate intensity and just barely managed to get into the same university. She remained the star, becoming the youngest principal investigator at the institute right after graduation. I applied there too, sacrificing my own career path just for the chance to be near her. Her voice pulled me back to the present. Ethan, deal with your family situation quickly. Don't let it affect your work. Her words were a bucket of ice water, dousing the tiny flame of hope. Her actions had kindled. She hadn't protected me. She had protected her work environment from a disruption. I lowered my gaze. Okay, I mumbled, after the nurse finished cleaning my cuts. Chloe glanced at her watch. There's a small dinner for the research group tonight. You should come. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was warm. The conversation centered on the team's latest breakthrough. Noah sat beside Chloe, animatedly describing his travels. His father, Professor Vance, was beaming as he looked at his son and his star prodigy. His eyes moved between Noah and Chloe, as he spoke with a broad smile. Chloe, it sounds like you and Noah make a great team. You're so composed, and he's so quick on his feet. You complement each other perfectly, in work and in personality. You know, you're not getting any younger, and you're always buried in your research. You should think about settling down. My Noah can be a bit immature, but he has a good heart. The implication was painfully obvious. The few people at the table who knew about my engagement to Chloe fell silent, their eyes darting nervously in my direction. Noah, blushing to the tips of his ears, muttered, "Dad," but his hopeful gaze was fixed on Chloe. Chloe was silent for a moment before replying in her usual even tone. "Thank you for your concern, Professor Vance, but my focus right now is on my work. I'm not thinking about anything else." As she finished speaking, the color drained from Noah's face. He stared at her in disbelief, then shot up from his chair and stormed out of the room. "Noah," Professor Vance called after him. Chloe watched him go, a slight frown on her face, before she stood up as well. "Excuse me, Professor. I'll go see what's wrong." The room was left in an awkward silence. Mark leaned over to me and whispered, "Ethan, why didn't she just tell him you're engaged?" "You want me to say something to Professor Vance?" I shook my head. "Don't bother. If she wouldn't acknowledge our relationship, having someone else do it for her would just be a farce." I excused myself to the restroom and slipped out to the quiet patio behind the restaurant. There, under a flowering dogwood tree, Noah had his arms wrapped around Chloe. His desperate voice drifted over to me. "Why not? Chloe, I love you. I know I'm not as mature and steady as Ethan, but I can learn. I'll work hard. I can be whatever you need me to be." Chloe wasn't hugging him back, but the fact that she allowed it spoke volumes. I thought of the handful of times I had tried to get close to her, only to be met with that subtle, but unmistakable recoil. Just then, as if sensing my presence, Chloe looked up and our eyes met. My face was a blank mask. I stared back as if watching a silent movie that had nothing to do with me. Noah, lost in his own despair, didn't notice. I know you better than he does, he pleaded. I know what makes you happy. I didn't linger. I turned and walked back to the dining room, excused myself by saying I felt unwell, and began the solitary walk back to my door. The wind seemed to scatter the last ashes of hope in my heart, leaving nothing but a hollow void. I had just finished getting ready for bed when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Chloe standing in the dim hallway light. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "About Noah." I turned him down. "I don't want you to get the wrong idea." I was surprised. I had expected her to tell me she had chosen Noah. Instead, here she was telling me she had rejected him, explaining herself because she was worried about what I might think. My voice was calm. "Whether you said yes or no to him has nothing to do with me anymore." She seemed taken aback by my complete detachment. "If there's nothing else," I added, "I need to get some sleep." She put her hand on the door frame, stopping me from closing it. "Ethan, something's been wrong with you lately." I looked away from her and pushed the door shut. The soft click of the latch separated me from the woman I had pursued for 10 years. I leaned my back against the cool wouldn't let out a long breath, a dull ache spreading through my chest like rust. I don't know how long I stood there before my phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. "Ethan, did you see the acceptance notice from the journal? How is Noah Vance the first author on the new materials paper? Weren't you and Chloe the project leads? You spent months collecting that data. Look, his is the only name on it. Not even Chloe's. What the hell is going on?" I immediately logged into the Institute's portal. The top announcement was impossible to miss. Congratulations to Noah Vance on the acceptance of his first author publication in Frontiers of Material Science. It was a top-tier journal. It was the paper based on my original concept, the one Chloe and I had spent months refining, the one whose key data I had personally spent 3 months in the lab generating. By any measure of contribution, the first author should have been Chloe or me, but there was only one name listed: Noah Vance. I called Chloe immediately. "What is going on with the authorship on this paper?" Her voice was calm on the other end. "I rejected him and he's taking it hard. It could affect his upcoming tenure review." I almost laughed from pure rage. "So you gave him my work as a consolation prize? Did you ask me? Did you think for 1 second to get my permission?" Her reply was infuriatingly calm and evasive. "The data was already there. He wrote the initial draft, so his name is appropriate. The paper is the property of the Institute, and I have the final say on authorship. Your contributions will be acknowledged elsewhere." How pathetic. A moment ago, I was actually moved by her rare attempt at an explanation. Now I saw it was just a way for her to justify giving my work to Noah. "Chloe, what do you think I am?" I said, my voice cold. "Just some nameless drone on your team who does the work without needing any credit." The line went silent when she finally spoke. Her words froze my blood. "Ethan, the only reason you came to the Institute was to be near me, wasn't it? These titles don't matter to you, but Noah needs accomplishments like this to establish his career, to secure his future in this field." Her roaring filled my ears, and I felt my blood run cold. She knew. She had known all along what I had sacrificed, why I was content to be her assistant, and she had taken that devotion, that willingness to step back, and used it as justification to give away my work. I wanted to scream at her, but instead, I just ended the call. The next week, the Institute held its annual symposium. The paper with Noah's name on it was one of the main highlights. Noah stood at the podium in a sharp suit, presenting the core findings. As murmurs of approval rippled through the audience, everything went smoothly until the QA. A question from an anonymous online viewer popped up in the chat. "I would like to question the academic integrity of Mr. Vance. The core data in this paper bears a striking resemblance to previously logged experimental records from Mr. Ethan Carter. Can Mr. Vance explain the origin of this data? Is this not a case of plagiarism and data falsification?" The auditorium erupted in murmurs. Noah stood frozen at the podium, his panicked eyes searching for Chloe in the crowd. Under the weight of 100 stares, Chloe walked onto the stage and took the microphone from Noah's rigid hand. She faced the restless crowd. "I am Chloe Hayes. Regarding the anonymous question, allow me to clarify. All work on this paper was conducted under my direct supervision. Noah Evans was the primary researcher. I stake my professional reputation on the integrity of this work. She paused, her eyes finding me in the audience. My face ashen. Ethan Carter is my assistant. His role was primarily administrative and supportive. He does not possess the core competencies required to conduct this research independently. This work belongs to no advance. That is indisputable. The room exploded with chatter. The director herself vouched for it. So Carter was just a glorified secretary. No wonder he didn't get credit. I guess that anonymous question was just our grapes. I stood frozen, feeling as if I'd been stripped, bare and left in a blizzard. Chloe turned to the helpless-looking Noah. Her voice softened. Noah, please continue with your presentation. Suddenly, she was beside me, her fingers digging into my wrist with enough force to make my bones ache. My voice shook with rage. Let go of me. Without looking at me, she addressed the murmuring crowd. My apologies. My assistant just needed to confirm a few details with me. With that, she physically dragged me from the auditorium. The heavy doors swung shut, muffling the noise from the hall. We were alone in the dim light of the lobby. I stared at her, my eyes burning, my chest heaving. Chloe, for him, you just publicly humiliated me. Dismissed me as some incompetent gopher. What in God's name am I to you? My voice broke, but then she stepped forward, put her arms around my neck, and pressed her cool lips to mine. It was a brief, completely passionless touch. That was over in an instant. My mind went completely blank, my blood turning to ice in my veins. She pulled back just enough to look up at my stunned, speechless face. Her lips barely moved. Are you calm now? Can we avoid any further disruptions? I stared at her face, inches from mine, in utter disbelief. I had once craved her touch with a desperate, pathetic longing. And now, this kiss I had dreamed of for years was nothing more than a tool to silence me, to keep me from ruining Noah's big moment. A tidal wave of humiliation crashed over me 100 times, more powerful than the public dismissal moments before. The sharp crack of a slap echoed in the lobby as my hand struck her cheek. My voice was shaking so badly I could barely speak, each word forced through clenched teeth. You think this is what I wanted? Chloe, you disgust me. I didn't look at her again. I turned, shoved the doors open, and walked away. I didn't go back to the symposia. I didn't try to argue or prove the truth. Nothing mattered anymore. The hallway lights were blindingly bright as I angrily wiped the tears from my eyes. I went straight to my lab, logged into my computer, and, without a moment's hesitation, I selected every file related to the project and permanently deleted it all. I might be leaving, but I wouldn't let Noah get away with fraud. A few hours later, I was at the airport security gate when they called my flight. I picked up my single suitcase and walked toward the gate without a backward glance. The plane climbed through a thick blanket of clouds. I blocked Chloe's number and all her social media profiles with my own hand. I had finally drawn a line under 10 years of my life. Chloe stood frozen watching my retreating back. I had hair. I who had always been so careful around her, who practically held my breath in her presence, had slapped her with all my strength. She could still see the look in my eyes. It wasn't anger. It was the despair of someone who had been utterly crushed. She could see my eyes, red-rimmed as I turned away, stubbornly refusing to shed a tear. Why she had only wanted me to calm down, to stop me from making an irreversible scene. The kiss. She had thought it was the quickest, most direct way to stop my outburst. She thought that was what I always wanted, wasn't it? To be close to her, to touch her. She had given it to me. So why had it only made me angrier? Noah's voice came from the doorway of the auditorium. Dr. Hayes, is everything all right? Ethan. Just Chloe snapped out of her thoughts, pushing down the unfamiliar feeling rising in her chest. It's fine. She cut him off. Finish your presentation. She walked back into the hall, forcing herself to concentrate on Noah's report. But the image of my red, hate-filled eyes kept flashing in her mind. After the symposium ended, Noah started to approach her, but she waved him away. She needed to be alone. She returned to her office and shut the door, trying to focus on the mountain of paperwork. But she couldn't concentrate. The dense lines of text on her screen seemed to blur into the image of my pale, accusing face. My words echoed in her head. She took out her phone, found my number and called. A recorded voice answered. The number you have dialed is not in service. not in service. She frowned and tried again with the same result. A strange sense of unease, like a creeping vine, began to tighten around her heart. She rarely called me. I was the one who kept her updated on every detail of her schedule. She realized she had to struggle too. Even remember my room number. She decided to go find me at the door. Some things needed to be discussed in person. The paper, the kiss, the engagement. She walked to the old dorm building and knocked on the door for 102. There was no answer. She knocked again, harder this time, but the room remained silent. The door across the hall opened, and a young researcher she didn't recognize peeked out. He seemed to recognize her and spoke nervously. Dr. Hayes, are you looking for Ethan? I don't think he's staying here anymore. Chloe's heart sank. Do you know where he went? The researcher shook his head. No idea. Back in her office. Chloe tried every way she could think of to reach me. The internal system showed I had taken a leave of absence with the reason left blank. She even had her assistant call the realtor, who confirmed the apartment had been sold, and the new owners had already moved in. I had simply vanished right after she had publicly disowned me and then kissed me. A panic unlike anything she had ever felt began to fray her normally unshakable composure. She remembered the look in my eyes. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a final goodbye. The realization was a physical blow. 2 days passed with no word from me. Noah tried to talk to her a few times, but she brushed him off. She grew more silent than ever, her presence so heavy that her own assistant was afraid to approach her. She buried herself in her work, trying to numb the feeling with complex data and experiments. But her mind kept wandering, just as the anxiety had a strange hollow feeling were becoming unbearable. Her eyes fell on the calendar on her desk. Tomorrow, the date circled in red jumped out at her. The wedding day. That was right. Tomorrow was supposed to be our wedding. When they had set the date, she hadn't felt much of anything. Just another task on a checklist. She had even seen it as an inconvenience. A day she'd have to take off. Guests she'd have to entertain. She had thought perhaps that a wedding would be a fair compensation for the guilt she felt over the kidnapping. To her, marriage was just a legal contract. Her life wouldn't really change. But now, staring at that glaring red circle, Chloe's heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow. Maybe she would see me tomorrow. I would be there in a suit, waiting for her. She could picture it perfectly. My nervous, hopeful expression. My eyes shining, focused only on her. The sudden image sent a strange, unfamiliar flutter through her chest. A flicker of something she hadn't realized was there. Anticipation. The wedding she had viewed as a burdensome repayment had suddenly become the one certain place she knew she could find me. She snatched up her phone and dialed the number she knew by heart. The same cold, recorded voice answered. She hung up, her fingers tightening around the phone. Tomorrow. She just had to wait until tomorrow. I would be at the wedding, after everything I had done to be with her. On the verge of marriage. How could I possibly give up? I would be there. What would she say? Apologize? Explain? Or would it be like always, where she would just have to make a small gesture, and I would quietly come back? Chloe leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Whatever happened, she would see me tomorrow. On the morning of the wedding, Chloe was up early. In the car on the way to the hotel, she rehearsed what she would say to me. She knew she had to apologize. She wasn't sure for what exactly. For the public humiliation, for the kiss, or for all the years of neglect that came before it. But she was certain that if she just made the effort, I would understand. It was me after all. I was always waiting for her. When she arrived at the hotel, there was no floral arch, no welcome sign. The entrance was on Irving Gly quiet. She frowned and started to walk in, but the hotel manager politely stopped her. Ma'am, can I help you with something? She gave her name. Chloe Hayes. I have a wedding reception here today. The manager checked his tablet, his expression shifting to one of professional regret. I'm very sorry, Dr. Hayes, but that event was canceled. Mr. Carter came in 5 days ago and canceled it himself. Canceled? Chloe stood frozen, the word not making sense. She repeated it, her own voice sounding hoarse and distant. Canceled. The manager nodded. Yes, Mr. Carter handled it in person. He paid the cancellation fee in full. Chloe stood rooted to the spot. The light from the crystal chandelier was making her dizzy. She was only just now realizing that she had never been involved in a single detail. Choosing the venue, the menu, the invitations. She had ignored it all. She had just signed her name on A final confirmation form. She couldn't even remember when. I had been the one to handle everything. To come to her again and again for her opinion. And what had she always said? You decide. Don't bother me with the small stuff. And so, I had cancelled our wedding. And she hadn't even known. She didn't remember the drive back to the institute. There was a hollow space in her chest where her heart should be. Cold wind whistling through it. A knock on her office door startled her. Noah walked in. Chloe, I need the raw process data from the materials project for a comparative analysis. Chloe snapped back to the present, pushing down a wave of irritation. She remembered I had told her I kept a hard copy of all important data backups in her office. I'll find it, she said curtly. She walked to her filing cabinet, but when she opened the door, she froze. The cabinet was a mess. Folders from different projects were jumbled together, loose paper stuffed into any available space. She realized I hadn't been there to organize it for nearly a week. She started searching through the files, her frustration mounting with every folder she couldn't find. Noah stood by watching her search, a flicker in his eyes. You know, Ethan really should have been more professional, he said quietly. Even if he was upset, he should have completed a proper handover. For such important data to just go missing, it's holding up the entire team's progress. Chloe's hands stopped moving. Her voice was flat. I put Ethan in charge of that data. If it's missing, it's my responsibility. The color drained from Noah's face, and he fell silent. Ignoring him, Chloe continued her search. She finally found a few printed pages in a folder tucked in the back. But the core process logs and the digital backup were gone. Then she remembered. I always kept a working copy on my own computer. She turned and strode to my old desk in the main lab. It was unervingly clean. Besides the standard issue computer and a few wilting plants, there was nothing personal left. It looked as if its occupant had just stepped out for a moment and would be right back. Chloe turned on the computer and typed in the password she knew I would use. Her birthday. Her heart gave a painful twinge. She found the encrypted project folder and opened it. It was empty. Chloe's breath hitched. I had deleted it. I had deleted months of painstaking work. Data I had treated as precious, and left nothing behind. It was in that moment that Chloe felt a true and total panic. A fear more profound than any she had felt facing a complex scientific problem seized her heart. As she stared at the empty folder, her mind a total blank. Two colleagues walked past, chatting. Did you hear Carter transferred to the Mojave branch? The conditions out there must be rough. You're nothing like Pasadena. But you have to admire the dedication. Chloe's head shot up, her pupils constricting. The plane landed in the harsh afternoon sun. I walked out of the small airport with my single bag, and a dry wind thick with the smell of dust hit me in the face. I squinted against the glare. The landscape flew past the car window, under a vast sky. Ochre-colored hills stretched to the horizon, dotted with the occasional lonely, windbreaker low-slung building. The endless, wild silence was a stark contrast to the constant noise of Pasadena. The branch campus was on the outskirts of town. Its modest walls and the few drab gray buildings stood in stark contrast to the sleek glass and steel headquarters. I was met by the branch administrator, Director Evans, a pleasant middle-aged woman with a warm smile. You must be Ethan Carter. It's a long trip out here. Director Evans showed me to the dormitory building, gave me a few quick instructions, and then left me to it. I pushed open the window, and a wind that smelled of dry earth filled the small room. The sky was a high, vast, almost impossibly deep blue. There was no Chloe here. No Noah. No suffocating expectations or whispered gossip. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away, and started unpacking my meager belongings. That afternoon, I decided to check out the archives. It was a room in a corner on the first floor, its door open, revealing stacks of files and rolled-up schematics. The archivist, a woman named Brenda, was sitting by the door sorting through index cards. She pushed her glasses up her nose when she saw me, her face breaking into a friendly smile. Well now, haven't seen you around before. You knew? I nodded politely. Yes, Mum. I'm Ethan Carter. Today's my first day. Brenda slapped her thigh. Ethan Carter. Oh, that's right. The hotshot from Pasadena. Welcome. Welcome. It's not every day our little outpost gets a big gun from headquarters. I managed a weak smile but said nothing. Brenda, however, was a talker. She chattered on about the goings-on at the branch and I listened quietly. You know, she said suddenly, Another researcher arrived just before you did. A young woman from New York. Maya Reed. She's a real character. So full of life. Makes friends with everyone instantly. Doesn't seem like a scientist at all. More like she's here on vacation. Just as she spoke, the sound of light footsteps and cheerful humming came down the hall. Brenda. I'm back to bother you again. I'm finished with those regional hydrogeggly maps. The voice preceded its owner as a tall woman in a hiking jacket blew in like a gust of wind. Her hair was wind-tousled, which only made her smiling face seem more vibrant. She dropped a roll of maps on Brenda's desk and looked up, her eyes meeting mine. She paused for a second, and her smile grew even wider. Brenda, who's this? You didn't tell me we had a new colleague. Brenda chuckled. This is Ethan Carter. Just transferred from headquarters. She then turned to me. Ethan, this is the young woman I was just telling you about. Maya Reed from New York. Maya immediately stepped forward, her hand outstretched. Ethan Carter. It's great to meet you. Maya read. I heard headquarters was sending in expert to beef up our data analysis. But I didn't expect someone so young. Welcome to the Mojave. Her handshake was warm and firm, a stark contrast to my cool fingers, and it radiated a kind of vibrant energy. I was a little taken aback by her immediate friendliness and gently pulled my hand away after a moment. Hello, you can just call me Ethan. Maya went with it easily. All right, Ethan. Nice name. And with that, she was off. She spoke quickly, her thoughts sleeping from the desert climate to the best local diners to a funny story about one of the observation sites. She didn't need any encouragement from me. She was a one-woman show. She was the polar opposite of Chloe. Chloe was like a glacier, cool and controlled, radiating distance. This woman, Maya, was like the midday desert sun. Intense, direct, and utterly unfiltered. I finally found a pause in her monologue to ask. You're from New York. The cosmopolitan energy of that city was such a jarring contrast to the rugged emptiness of this place. Maya grinned. A carefree, easy smile. Home is where you hang your hat. I heard the projects out here were interesting and the landscape was one of a kind. So I put in for a temporary transfer. Life's too short not to see as much as you can. Right. She gestured with the roll of maps. Anyway, I'll let you get settled in. If you ever need a tour guide, just give me a shout. With a wave to Brenda. She was gone as quickly as she had arrived. The room still seemed to hum with the energy she brought into it. Brenda shook her head, smiling. That one's a whirlwind. I didn't reply. Just walked over to the shelves and started looking for the materials I needed. On Saturday morning, the shuttle bus rattled across the desert floor. I leaned against the window, taking the weekend as a chance to explore the nearby town. It wasn't much, just a single main street with a handful of shops. I pushed open the glass door of a small bookstore, a little bell chiming overhead. The shop was quiet, except for the owner and a woman in glasses, speaking in low tones at the counter. With Mr. Peterson in the hospital, the kids' science class is canceled. They were so looking forward to it. My fingers tracing the spines of the books on a shelf stopped. I felt a little jolt in my chest and turned around. Both the owner and the teacher were looking at me. A stranger. My voice sounded a little rough in the quiet shop. Excuse me. Do you need a substitute for the science class? They both stared at me for a second. The teacher pushed her glasses up. And you are? I'm a new researcher at the institute just outside of town. I explained. My name is Ethan. I paused. If you think the kids wouldn't mind, I could try. The teacher's eyes lit up as if I'd thrown her a lifeline. She grabbed my hand enthusiastically. Oh, Mr. Carter, that would be amazing. Thank you. Thank you. The school is just down the street. Let me show you. The school was even more run down than I'd imagined. The walls were peeling, and the playground was just a patch of packed dirt. A group of kids were chasing each other, their skin tanned from the sun, their eyes startlingly bright. The school bell was an old iron triangle, rung by hand. I stood in front of the small class, 2 pairs of curious eyes fixed on me. I took a breath and picked up a piece of chalk. Today, I said, we're going to talk about physics. I tried to explain the concepts in the simplest terms, using demonstrations to keep them engaged. Seeing their excited faces, I felt a pure and simple satisfaction I hadn't experienced in a long time. When the bell rang, the kids crowded around me, calling Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter, firing off one question after another. I answered them all patiently, a smile forming on my face, without me even realizing it. The sun was bright when I stepped out of the classroom. I looked up and saw Maya leaning against a rusty set of monkey bars on the playground, her arms crossed, a smile on her face. "Not bad, Mr. Carter," she called out. "Not bad at all." I was surprised. "What are you doing here?" She hopped down and walked over. "I'm here every week. I teach their gym and art classes." She gestured to a few kids still tearing around the playground. "Honestly, I can barely keep up with them." She fell into step beside me as we walked toward the school gate. When the rattling shuttle bus arrived, we sat together on the worn seats. Maya pointed out the window at the passing landscape. "See that patch of red earth over there? They say there's oil underneath. Someone tried to start a mine once, but it fell through. Over that way, once the spring grass comes in, you can sometimes see wild burrows." She talked nonstop, but it wasn't annoying. It was filled with a genuine love for this place. When the bus dropped us off at the institute, she asked casually, "So, you going back next week? We could go together." I hesitated for a second, then nodded. Back in my room, I looked out the window at the star-filled sky. I thought about the kids' bright, eager eyes, and Maya's words. "They really like you." It felt like something had gently touched a part of my heart that had been a wasteland for a very long time. The institute organized a short field sampling trip to a nearby Badlands area. My data team and Maya's geology team were heading to the same region, so we shared a bus. On the ride over, Maya was her usual self, cracking jokes and keeping the mood light, even getting a few chuckles out of the older, more serious researchers. But the moment we got to the site, she was all business. She was the first one to shoulder the heavy sample cases and scramble up the steep inclines, expertly setting anchor points and then reaching back to help the next person up. She made sure everyone had water, reminding us to stay hydrated in the intense sun. And she found a less strenuous spot on level ground for one of the older researchers to work. One of the senior professors smiled at me. "That Maya is more capable than she lets on." I watched her as she worked, kneeling on the ground, carefully scraping sediment from a rock crevice. Her face was a mask of concentration, a bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple. It was a stark contrast to her usual carefree demeanor. I said nothing, just focused more intently on recording my own data. On the drive back, the sky grew dark within minutes. A towering wall of yellow dust had blotted out the horizon. "Damn it, a dust storm," the driver yelled, slamming on the brakes. The wind hit us with a roar. A blinding cloud of sand that dropped visibility to almost zero. The world turned a murky, chaotic yellow. Maya's voice cut through the noise. "We can't stay here. The wind could bury the bus. I know a sheltered spot on the leeward side of that ridge. It's not far. Everyone grab your gear and follow me. Stay close together." She yanked the door open first, and a blast of sand and wind rushed in, choking us and blinding us. Facing into the gale, she shouted directions, helping people out one by one, half carrying one of the older researchers who was moving slowly. I wrapped a band over my face and followed her into the storm. In the chaos, a warm hand grabbed my wrist. It was Maya. She didn't say a word, just held on tight, pulling me forward through the blinding sand, using her body to shield me from the worst of the wind. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes, we reached the shelter of a large rock outcropping, and the wind immediately lessened. "Everyone get down," Maya yelled, shrugging off her own pack. "Huddle together. Make yourself small." Like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat, she produced a handful of extra bandanas and goggles from her pack, quickly handing them out to those who were unprepared. When she got to me, before I could take the bandana from her, she had already shaken it out and was carefully tying it around my face. Her movements were quick and efficient, no wasted motion. Then she positioned herself on the edge of our small group, keeping a watchful eye on the storm. The storm raged for nearly an hour before it finally began to die down. When the sky reappeared, it was a hazy gray. We were all a mess, but we were safe. It was late by the time we got back to the institute. After we had accounted for everyone and all the samples, Maya and I walked back toward the dorms. We walked in silence. When we got to our building, Maya stopped. Her face was still streaked with dust, but her expression was serious. "Ethan, you were really calm back there." I brushed some sand out of my hair. "You were the one who knew what to do. You seemed like you'd done it 100 times before." Maya gave a self-deprecating smile. You get into enough trouble. You learn a few things. She unconsciously fiddled with the watch on her left wrist. It had a simple minimalist design. But the way the metal caught the dim light told me it was something special. I didn't press. Well, thank you, I said. Maya's bright demeanor returned instantly. Don't mention it. Get some rest. See you tomorrow. The news broke on Monday morning via an all-staff email. No faculty had been terminated for academic misconduct. Dr. Chloe Hayes had received a formal reprimand for failure to properly supervise her team. The announcement sent ripples through our quiet little branch. At breakfast in the cafeteria, I could hear the younger researchers whispering about it. Plagiarism. Can you believe it? On that Frontiers paper. The nerve of that guy. And Jote's got a reprimand. That's going to look bad on her record. So whose work did he steal? The email didn't say. Who do you think? The guy who used to work on her team. The one who just transferred here. Him over there. A voice dropped lower. And I felt their eyes on me as I ate alone by the window. I pretended not to hear, calmly finishing my coffee. I spent the entire day out in the field. The desert wind was relentless and the sun was brutal. I worked with my team, pulling survey lines and collecting samples. My movements efficient and focused. Sweat dripped down my face, but I just wiped it away. My attention fixed on the compass in my field notes. During a water break, one of the younger guys on my team brought it up. Ethan, that was your work he stole. At least they fired the guy. It's some kind of justice. I took a long drink from my canteen. My voice flat. They followed procedure. That's all that matters. Let's get back to it. We need to survey the next point before we lose the light. I stood up and started walking toward the next survey marker. My stride was steady and purposeful, as if I wasn't the person whose work had been stolen, whose name was now the subject of gossip. My team members exchanged surprised glances. The sun was setting as our truck rattled back to the main building. I jumped out and stretched my stiff neck. And then I saw her. Chloe. She was standing under the lone, bare cottonwood tree by the main gate. I was about to say goodbye to my colleagues and head to my room when my eyes swept past the gate. My feet stopped dead. Someone was standing under the bare cottonwood tree. It was Chloe. She just stood there. I had no idea for how long. Her eyes fixed on me. She looked like a traveler dying of thirst in the desert who had just spotted an oasis. The surrounding sounds of my colleagues saying goodbye, and the truck's idling engine seemed to fade away. I felt an invisible hand squeeze my heart, then release it, leaving it beating in an empty chest. I never expected to see her here, like this. It had been nearly a month since I'd sent that to-word text message. The air felt thick, silent. It was one of the older guys from my team, Dave, who broke the silence. Dr. Hayes, what brings you all the way out here? Chloe didn't seem to hear him. Her eyes were still locked on me. I didn't move forward, but I didn't look away either. We stood there, separated by a few yards of dusty ground, as the evening wind swirled around us. My face was a blank slate. No anger, no surprise. I looked at her as if she were a complete stranger. I could see that my utter calm was more devastating to her than any outburst would have been. She would have preferred me to scream at her, even hit her again. Anything but this placid indifference that told her she no longer mattered at all. I was the one who finally spoke. Dr. Hayes, if this is official business, please schedule an appointment. Through the branch office. I paused, meeting her gaze as her pupils contracted. And, if this is personal, I don't believe we have anything left to discuss. Without a second glance at her ashen face, I walked past her and headed for my dorm. Chloe stood frozen watching me go. The I'm sorry she had rehearsed 1,000, turning to ash in her mouth. I didn't slow my pace. The door to my room clicked shut behind me, sealing me off from the world outside. I had thought seeing Chloe again would stir something in me, but after the initial shock, there was nothing left but a deep weariness, and a calm that bordered on numbness. The next day, I woke up early and went to the cafeteria. An hour I knew Chloe wouldn't be there. But when I left the archives later that morning, I saw her waiting for me at the end of the hall. She looked as if she hadn't slept. She straightened up the moment she saw me, her lips moving, her voice dry and raspy. Ethan. I stopped keeping my distance. She took a step closer. I know I was wrong. I ignored your feelings. The words sounded foreign and clumsy on her tongue. About Noah. About the paper. About what I said at the symposium. I am so sorry. She paused. and it seemed to take a great effort for her to meet my eyes. It wasn't until you were gone that I realized I can't live without you. This past month, I have been. I cut her off. Dot Hayes. My face remained impassive. I couldn't even summon the energy for sarcasm. I accept your apology, but it's not necessary. Chloe froze, clearly not expecting this response. There was no anger, no tears, not even the slightest crack in my composure. I went on. The problem was never Noah or the paper. The problem is that to you, Ethan Carter was never important. You took my presence for granted. You took for granted that I would handle everything for you. The same way you take air for granted. You only notice it when it's gone and you can't breathe. But you never considered that even the air needs to be acknowledged, not just consumed. I tilted my head, my gaze holding a new, almost cruel clarity. You're not in pain because you suddenly realize you love me. You're in pain because you've lost a convenient and reliable part of your routine. Chloe, you were never in love with me. You were in love with the order I brought to your life. My words hit her like a bucket of ice water, and the color rained from her face. She opened her mouth to argue, to deny it, but no words came out. She knew that any defense would sound pathetic and hollow in the face of the truth I had just laid bare. So please, I finished. Don't come looking for me for personal reasons again. It's a distraction from my work. Without another look at her stricken face, I turned and walked away. Chloe stood frozen, watching my resolute back. And for the first time, it truly sank in that she had lost me completely and irrevocably. A profound sense of panic and emptiness began to consume her. I went straight to the cafeteria, grabbed a plate of food, and found a table in the corner. A cheerful voice broke the silence. You look terrible. Bad night's sleep. Or did the coyotes keep you up? I looked up to see Maya setting, her tray down across from me. I managed a weak smile. I'm fine. Miles laughed. You're right. Your forehead's going to be permanently creased. Listen, I'm heading out to the North Ridge this afternoon. I heard there's a unique rock formation out there. Something you won't see in a textbook. Want to come? It'll do you good to get out of the lab for a bit. She didn't ask what was wrong. Just offered an escape. We can even call it preliminary field work. So it's not a waste of time. She added, always finding a plausible excuse. That was impossible to refuse. Her easygoing nature was a relief. I nodded. That afternoon, Maya drove us out into the desert. She had an old folk station playing on the radio, and she tapped her fingers on the steering wheel in time with the music. Look over there, she said, pointing. Doesn't that ridge look like the spine of a whale? Wind and water are the best sculptors. I looked where she was pointing. The ridges and gullies carved by millennia of wind and rain glowed a deep red in the afternoon sun. She parked the truck and grabbed her gear, leading me up a small hill. She pointed to a cross-section of exposed rock. See the layers. Each one tells a story about the ancient climate, a secret kept by time. She picked up a small fossil and handed it to me. When you're standing in front of geological time, your own problems seem pretty small. Whenever I'm having a bad day, I just come out here and look at the rocks. It helps. I held the cool, smooth stone in my hand, tracing its ancient patterns with my thumb. I didn't say anything, but I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease. On the drive back, Maya didn't offer any more words of comfort. She just chatted about local trivia, from the wild burros to the best place in town for barbecue. And the easy conversation was a welcome distraction. Then the radio crackled to life. We have a malfunction at Deep Observation Well 3. We need an emergency repair team now. Maya grabbed the radio. Roger, that we're on our way. She turned to me, all business. It's a critical monitoring station. We can't lose that data stream. It'll ruin the whole project. I didn't hesitate. I'll go with you. I know the data protocols. When we got to the observation well, Chloe was already there. Her face was pale and her breathing was shallow. The altitude was clearly getting to her, but she was still forcing herself to inspect the equipment. Her eyes darkened when she saw Maya and me arrive together. Maya got right to it. What's the situation? Chloe's voice was strained. The gasket's shut, and the bolts are rusted solid. I can't get them to budge. She tried to force a wrench, but her hands were shaking so badly it slipped, nearly gassing her hand. Maya stepped in and took the wrench from her. Careful. You force that and you'll strip the whole housing. Dave, get me the rust penetrant and dud or crench. As she started to work, she glanced at me. Ethan, can you double-check the specs? On the replacement gasket, I quickly consulted the manual. It's the right model, pressure rating is correct. A strong gust of wind made Chloe choke and cough, and she swayed on her feet. Maya steadied her. Dr. Hayes, you've got altitude sickness. Go rest in the truck. We can handle this. Chloe started to protest, but a wave of dizziness forced her to lean against the truck for support. She watched as Maya and I worked together seamlessly. Maya expertly removed the old gasket while I handed her tools and logged the real-time data. Our movements efficient and synchronized. The tightness grew in Chloe's chest as she watched us. She remembered how I used to work with her in the lab just like this, anticipating her every need, always reliable, but she had never truly seen me. She was only now realizing that away from her, I was not just a shadow. I had my own light, and it was so bright it hurt her eyes to look at it. Maya wiped the sweat from her brow. All right, let's run a diagnostic. The indicator light on the monitor blinked green, and the data stream on the screen stabilized. Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief. The ride back was silent. Chloe rested in the back seat with her eyes closed. Maya drove her eyes on the road, occasionally glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I stared out the window at the desolate landscape, my face softened by the setting sun. Thanks for your help today, I said quietly, still looking out the window. Maya raised an eyebrow. For what? It's our job. But I have to say, you're better with your hands and cooler under pressure than I expected. You don't seem like a desk jockey. I turned to look at her, the corner of my mouth twitching into a small smile. I'm no expert, but I've always found that practical application is more grounding than pure theory. Miles laughed. Now that's something I can agree with. I like that about you. You're down to earth. When we got back to the dorms, Maya helped me load the gear. Let's touch base before the data analysis meeting tomorrow. Go over the details. I nodded. Sounds good. She waited until I was inside the building before she turned to leave. In the back seat, Chloe slowly opened her eyes. She watched the empty doorway and Maya's retreating figure, her hands clenching into fists. She had wanted to prove she didn't need me, but all she had done was stage a clumsy performance that highlighted how capable and reliable someone else was. A feeling of failure and panic, more intense than any she had ever known, washed over her. That weekend, there was a small get-together in the cafeteria. A few of the senior researchers broke out some homemade liquor, and the mood was festive. Maya was in her element, laughing and talking with everyone. But I noticed her eyes kept flicking over to the quiet corner where I was sitting. I ate quietly, making small talk with the people at my table, keeping to myself but not seeming unfriendly. Someone offered me a glass. Ethan, don't be a stranger. You have to try some of Professor Miller's famous homebrew. I was about to decline, but Maya smoothly intervened. Go easy on him. Mark, we've got to be out in the field at dawn tomorrow, and I need my data guy to have a clear head. I'll take it for him. She downed the glass in one go to a chorus of cheers, then shot me a quick wink. I looked down at my plate, but I couldn't stop a small smile from forming. Chloe watched from another table, her knuckles white where she gripped her glass. That woman was so vibrant, like a bonfire. And next to her, Chloe felt cold and awkward. She drained her own glass, the harsh liquor burning her throat, but doing nothing to quell the sour feeling in her chest. After the party broke up, I stepped outside for some air. The desert night sky was breathtakingly clear, the Milky Way so bright it felt like you could reach out and touch it. Enjoying the view, Maya's voice came from behind me. She handed me a warm can of soda. Here, the wind's picking up. Don't want you to get cold. I took it, the warmth a pleasant surprise. We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence. It was Maya who spoke first. You know, I think you're pretty incredible to come here from Pasadena, where the conditions are so much better, and not complain once. You just put your head down and work. She hesitated for a second. I heard you used to be on Drive Hayes' team. I tensed slightly but didn't deny it. Maya looked up at the stars, speaking as if to herself. My family's in New York. The Reed Corporation. It doesn't really have anything to do with me. I have older siblings who are much more capable, which leaves me free to do what I want. And what I've always wanted is to be out here studying rocks. My family gave up trying to control me a long time ago. She turned to look at me, her eyes full of a surprising sincerity. So I get it. That feeling of needing to escape something, whether it's a suffocating relationship or a life that someone else has planned out for you. I tightened my grip on the soda can. its coolness seeping into my palm. Just then, we heard stumbling footsteps behind us. It was Chloe, standing a few feet away, her face pale and her eyes bloodshot. She was clearly drunk. Maya frowned and instinctively moved to stand slightly in front of me. I gently touched Maya's arm, a silent signal to stay put. Chloe lunged forward, trying to grab my arm, but Maya blocked her. Chloe's breathing was ragged, her words slurring together. What right do you have? Ethan loved me for 10 years. 10 years. You've known him for 5 minutes. What could you possibly know about him? Maya let out a short, sharp laugh, her voice dripping with sarcasm. 10 years. You remember the number. I'll give you that. And in those 10 years, what exactly did you do for him? Did you steal his research and give it to someone else? Did you take his devotion for granted? Did you publicly humiliate him at the moment he needed your support the most? Chloe stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. Maya's smile widened, but it was cold. Drop haze. You managed to forget that he nearly died saving your life. But you sure remembered the 10 years number, didn't you? She glanced at me, then stopped herself, realizing she had just revealed she knew more about my past than she'd let on. I met her eyes, my own expression unreadable, then turned back to Chloe. Are you done, Dr. Hayes? You should go inside. You'll catch a cold out here. Chloe stared into my impassive eyes, and all the fight seemed to go out of her. Come back with me, Ethan, she pleaded, her voice weak. Name your price. Lead investigator on any project you want. First authorship. Anything. Just don't throw your life away on some nobody from nowhere. She can't give you the future you deserve. Looking at her so completely undone, I just felt a sense of pity. The iceberg I had once worshipped had melted into this pathetic puddle. I spoke each word slowly, clearly, and firmly. Chloe, don't you get it? I don't love you anymore. It was over the day you stood up and told the world I was worthless. All for Noah's sake. I turned to Maya, my voice softening. Let's go. She nodded, and we walked away together, leaving Chloe standing frozen in the darkness. After we walked a little way, Maya rubbed her nose, a little embarrassed. You know, for the record, I'm not a nobody from nowhere. I did introduce myself, for the first time that night. I genuinely smiled, a real warmth spreading through me. I know, the heir to the Reed Corporation. Maya held up her hands in surrender, a blush creeping up her cheeks. Hey, stop that. Out here, I'm just a geologist. It has nothing to do with my family. Just call me Maya. She paused, her voice dropping a little, a new awkwardness in her tone. And did I say too much back there? I stopped walking, my eyes clear in the moonlight. You mean the fact that you knew about the kidnapping? Maya swallowed hard, then met my gaze, her own clear and honest. Yes, I'd heard about you before I transferred. They said you were the youngest senior engineer at the institute, a rising star, and then you volunteered for a posting in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't figure it out, so I did some digging. And then during that dust storm, I saw you. You were struggling just as much as anyone. But your first instinct was to protect the samples, to protect the data. I rubbed the calusas on my fingertips, a souvenir from years of lab work and field work. I thought back over the last month. Every time I had felt myself sinking, Maya had coincidentally appeared. She'd have an extra thermos of coffee, or she just happened to be passing by and offered to help me with my gear, or she'd distract me with some funny story. I turned and really looked at her. In the moonlight, her eyes were as clear and bright as the desert sky. There was no pity in them, no sympathy, only a steady, genuine admiration. A lightness I hadn't felt in years entered my voice. You know, I said, in the entire time I've been here, you're the only person who hasn't said it's a waste. Everyone else looks at me like I've. Maya's eyes widened, her tone suddenly fierce. A waste. Are you kidding me? The people who can thrive out here, who can do real, meaningful work in a place like this, they're the ones who are truly brilliant. A greenhouse flower might be pretty, but it can't compare to a Joshua tree. Something that can survive the drought and the wind. Something that holds the earth together. That has real value. The words came out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them back for a long time. She seemed to realize how intense she sounded, and a blush crept up her neck. But she didn't look away. She stood up straight and looked me right in the eye, her own eyes shining. So, can you give me a chance to be out here with you? doing important work, watching the sun rise and set over this desert. The wind rustled, sending a shower of fine sand skittering across the pavement, a soft accompaniment to her startlingly direct confession. I looked at her flushed cheeks and her unwavering gaze, and after a moment's silence, I heard myself say one word. Okay, her eyes lit up like the entire Milky Way had just appeared in them. She awkwardly reached out as if to touch my arm, then pulled her hand back, and finally, just gave a solemn nod. Okay then. It's a deal. No take-backs. Before anything else could happen, Director Evans came hurrying toward us. Carter, read just the two I was looking for. We just got an urgent request. The joint survey team is heading to Black Wind Canyon first thing tomorrow morning, and they've specifically requested both of you. The geology is complex. They need a data specialist assigned. Geologists working together. Pack your gear. It's a high-priority mission. You could be out there for a few days. Maya responded instantly. Understood. We'll be ready. She turned to me, her eyes shining with excitement. I nodded. No problem. I'll go get my equipment ready now. Director Evans added. Oh, and one more thing. Headquarters is sending someone to support the mission. Dr. Hayes actually. She volunteered. She'll be joining your convoy in the morning. The smile on Maya's face faltered, and she looked at me. My own expression didn't change. Understood, I said calmly. I turned to Maya and gave her a small, reassuring smile. See you in the morning. We'll head out together. Maya's face brightened instantly. See you tomorrow. Convoy leaves at 0600 sharp. I'll bring you breakfast. I watched her go, a genuine smile spreading across my face, and I walked back to my room with a lighter step than I'd had in years. At 6 the next morning, the convoy departed on schedule. Maya hopped out of her ruck and pressed a warm breakfast burrito and a thermos of coffee into my hands. Heat up. It's a bumpy ride, and it's no good cold. I took them, the warmth seeping into my fingers and my chest. During the drive, Maya explained the geological background of Black Wind Canyon. At one point, getting excited, she grabbed my hand to trace a fault line on the map spread between us. Her fingers were warm and dry, and I gently pulled my hand away. Maya noticed my discomfort, and a flicker of amusement crossed her face, but she didn't press, just continued her explanation. When we arrived at the survey site, she helped me with my safety harness. She leaned in to check the buckle, her breath warm against my ear. She murmured, lots of loose scree here. Stay close and step where I step. Okay, I said, my eyes on her focused profile, my heart beating a little faster. Chloe started to walk toward us, but the team leader called her over to check the stability of a rock face on the far side of the canyon, leaving her to watch as we worked together. During a break, Maya pulled a container of sliced melon from her pack. Here, have some fruit. Gotta get your vitamins out here. As she speared a piece with a fork and held it out to me, her eyes bright with expectation. I hesitated for only a second before leaning forward and taking the piece of melon. The sweet juice was a welcome relief. Across the canyon, I saw Chloe watching us, her hand gripping her water bottle so tightly her knuckles were white. Chloe took a deep breath and walked over, her voice tight. Ethan, I have some discrepancies in my data. I need you to cross-reference the baseline parameters with me. Are you free? Before I could answer, Maya spoke up. Dark Haze. Let him finish his break. It can wait a few minutes. Chloe already had her notebook out, pointing to a line of data. This pH reading is clearly an outlier. It could skew the entire analysis. She moved closer, effectively positioning herself between me and Maya. Maya shifted, placing the container of fruit in my other hand. Her voice was pleasant but firm. The data isn't going anywhere. Can wait until after lunch. A person in such a hurry might miss something important, like the stratification in that rock face over there. We have to be meticulous after all. Chloe's expression hardened. Of course we do. Maya just smiled. And checking data when you're hungry and tired is a good way to miss a decimal point. That wouldn't be very meticulous at all, would it? I put down my fork, took the notebook from Chloe, and scanned the page. The value is correct, I said calmly. It's a variance due to a difference in sampling depth. It's in my notes from yesterday's survey. Maya chuckled softly and took a drink from her canteen, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. Chloe's fingers tightened on the notebook, her knuckles white. After a long moment, she whispered, I see. Before she could say another word, A deep rumble echoed from the mountain above us. The ground trembled, and loose rocks began to skitter down the slope. Landslide. The team leader yelled. Everyone to the safe zone now. Maya reacted instantly, grabbing my wrist and pulling me toward the designated safe zone. But Chloe ran the other way against the fleeing group back toward our equipment. Inside one of those cases was the raw data I had just collected. The core of the entire project. Leave it. It's too dangerous, I yelled, starting to run after her. But she was already in the rockful zone. Just as she grabbed the equipment case, a boulder the size of a basketball broke loose and tumbled directly toward her. Chloe managed to hurl the case toward the safe zone, but she couldn't get out of the way in time. The rock slammed into her back, as she crumpled to her knees, blood pouring from a gash on her forehead, staining the dusty ground raid. I tried to run to her, but Maya held me back, her grip like iron. It's still coming down. It's too dangerous. Ethan, wait. Chloe looked up, her eyes finding mine, and she smiled. It was a bloody, broken smile, but it was also a smile of profound relief. Blood blurred her vision. Another rock struck her leg, and she let out a pained grunt, but her voice was surprisingly clear. Ethan, I've loved you for a long time. I was just too stupid to realize it until you were gone. You said I didn't love you, that I just couldn't stand the disruption to my life. I'm ready to prove you wrong right now. Her eyes filled with tears, which mixed with the blood on her face. Now, do you believe me? I stood frozen, stunned by her desperate, belated confession. A storm of emotions churning inside me. The rock fall seemed to be slowing. Seizing the moment, Maya sprinted across the unstable ground to Chloe's side. She quickly assessed the injuries. Her left leg looks broken, and she's got a bad contusion on her back. Don't move her. We can make it worse. Chloe's eyes looked past Maya's shoulder, latching on my pale face with a desperate hope. Maya managed to shove the rock off Chloe's leg. But, as she was lifting her, a smaller, sharp piece of shale shot down the slope, slicing a deep gash in Maya's arm. Blood welled up instantly. Maya grunted in pain, but gritted her teeth, adjusted her grip on Chloe, and started carrying her toward the safe zone. Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you saving me? Maya gently lowered Chloe onto a stretcher, and turned to me with a reassuring smile. Though her own arm was bleeding freely, her voice was quiet, but her words were crystal clear. I'm not going to let you be indebted to her, Ethan, and I'm not going to let you make a choice out of guilt. I looked at the bleeding gash on Maya's arm, then at Chloe, pale and barely conscious on the stretcher, and silently got into the passenger seat of the truck. The drive to the nearest hospital was made in complete silence. Maya drove with intense focus, her eyes occasionally flicking to me in the rearview mirror. I just stared out the window at the passing desert, my face unreadable. While the doctors worked on Chloe in the emergency room, I stood at the far end of the hall, staring at the linoleum floor. Maya leaned against the opposite wall, her worried eyes never leaving me. Let me see to that arm, I said, taking the antiseptic wipes and bandages a nurse had given me and walking over to her. She flinched as I reached for her arm, then seemed to think better of it and held it out. She hissed softly as the antiseptic touched the raw cut, but held perfectly still. I softened my touch. Does it hurt? I asked, my voice slow. She shook her head, but her eyes, full of a tentative anxiety, never left my face. As I was closing the first aid kit, I heard her ask in a small, hesitant voice, Ethan, are you going to go back to her? Because she saved your data? Because she's hurt so badly? I stopped what I was doing and looked up at her. Her face was flushed, and she wouldn't meet my eyes, looking like a guilty child. Her voice was barely a whisper. She almost died for you, and she said all those things. If you had a change of heart, I would understand. I looked at her, so anxious and yet trying so hard to be magnanimous, and I couldn't help but smile. I reached out and gently tapped her on the nose. If you were so worried about that, why did you risk getting her to save her? Her head snapped up, and the words tumbled out in a rush. I didn't want you to be grateful to her. I just couldn't stand by and watch someone get hurt. Her saving the data was her choice. You shouldn't feel obligated to. I cut her off gently. Mamie's voice was quiet but firm. I'm grateful she saved my data. And I'm grateful that today, she finally made me understand some things with absolute clarity. But gratitude is one thing, and love is another. They aren't the same. I looked her straight in the eye. 10 years was more than enough time to see what was real and what wasn't. Habit. A desire for control. None of those things are love. I zipped the first aid kit shut. The sound was crisp and final, like closing a book on the last 10 years of my life. I was moved by what she said today. But it's too late. Some wounds, once they've scarred over, can't be reopened. It only causes more pain. I glanced toward Chloe's room. Through the crack in the door, I could see her lying in bed, her face pale as a sheet. Just then, a tiny, almost inaudible sob came from the room. I froze. Through the crack in the door, I saw a single tear trace a path from the corner of Chloe's eye into her hairline. I watched for a moment, then turned and handed the first aid kit to Maya. Can you take this back to the nurse's station? I'm going to go see her. Maya was still staring at me, processing what I'd said. I gave her a gentle nudge. Go on, and keep that cut dry. She finally snapped out of it, took the kit, and walked off toward the nurse's station with a clumsy gait. She glanced back once, and I gave her a reassuring smile. Only then did she continue on her way. I watched Maya disappear around the corner and let out a long, slow breath. A 10-year obsession had finally, completely been laid to rest. I turned toward Chloe's room to say a final goodbye. Not as her former fiancé, but as a colleague. To offer the thanks and concern that was owed. But I knew with a certainty that, settled deep in my bones, that from this day forward, my eyes would only follow one person. The woman who got adorably flustered and jealous, who blushed at a simple compliment, but who would without a moment's hesitation throw herself in front of danger for me. When I entered the room, Chloe was staring out the window, her face pale and drawn in the morning light. Her voice was raspy as she pointed to the chair beside her bed. Sit, she said, her tone as neutral as if she were speaking to a casual acquaintance. We sat in silence for a moment. The only sound the rustle of the desert wind in the trees outside. It was Chloe who spoke first. After the kidnapping, she said, her voice low, I kept having nightmares that you were dying. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, and the only thing that would calm me down was seeing you sleeping peacefully in the next room, knowing you were still breathing. I said nothing. It was the first time she had ever spoken of this. So beneath that silent, icy exterior, there had been a storm raging all along. She turned to look at me, her eyes full of a profound regret. I was so stupid. I thought that by keeping you close, by offering you marriage, I was repaying a debt. I never once stopped to ask you what you actually wanted. I handed her the glass of water from the bedside table. It's over. We don't need to talk about it. Chloe took the glass, her fingers tracing patterns on the cool surface. The paper, she said quietly. I submitted a revised version, with you as the first author. All the credit, all the accolades, they should have been yours. I looked out the window, watching the survey team's convoy kicking up a cloud of dust as it drove away. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, my voice distant. I have new projects now, new goals. Her gaze followed mine. Maisie asked, her voice barely a whisper. Is she good to you? A small smile touched my lips, and my voice softened. The other day, she tried to make me hot chocolate. She used salt instead of sugar. It was the worst thing I've ever tasted. And she made me drink the whole thing. For the first time, a genuine low laugh escaped Chloe's lips. The sound made her wince in pain, and she coughed, a single tear escaping the corner of her eye. I couldn't tell if it was from the pain or something else entirely. On the day Chloe was discharged, a rare sunshower broke over the desert. The rain hit the dry earth, releasing its dusty, sweet scent into the air. Maya held a large umbrella over us, pulling me close so I wouldn't get wet. As I looked up, I saw Chloe standing in the hospital doorway. Through the veil of rain, her eyes met Maya's for a long moment. Then Chloe gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, a look of acceptance in her eyes, before turning and walking decisively to the black car waiting for her. In the car's rear-view mirror, she saw Maya fussing over me, trying to wipe a stray raindrop from my cheek as I laughed and dodged her hand. The light in my eyes, she noted, was brighter than any rainbow. Chloe closed her eyes, turning in May I finally be free. 3 months later, my proposal for a fragile ecosystem preservation initiative in the Mojave was designated a national priority project with full funding. Maya took to spending her evenings in my lab, and on nights when we worked late, she would grab a rock hammer and use it as a microphone, belting out off-key love songs until the night watchman would yell at us, sending her scrambling away in a fit of giggles that always made me laugh. The following spring, we took our first real vacation. Maya spread a world map across the floor. Okay, Iceland for the Aurora Borealis, the Atacama for the stars, or the Amazon to study rock formations. Without looking too closely, I reached out and pointed to a tiny, unnamed island in the South Pacific. On the edge of a lagoon in the Cook Islands, Maya pulled a soda can tab from her pocket, her expression completely serious. The diamond fell in the ocean, she said solemnly. So this will have to do until I dive down and get it. I laughed and held out my hand, letting her slide the metal tab onto my finger. This'll work for now, I said. I'll consider it an IOU. As the warm tide washed over her ankles, she produced a diamond ring from behind her back as if by magic, her eyes shining brighter than the vast sea of stars above us. Ethan Carter, she said, will you travel with me to all the forgotten corners of the map, be my research partner for life, and see every wonder this world has to offer? I leaned down and kissed her, the taste of salt from the sea and the sweet of her happy tears mingling into the pure taste of joy. And so we did. We worked on coral reef restoration in Belize, cataloged endangered flora in the Amazon, and tracked glacial melt in the Arctic. Maya's camera was always full of pictures of me, frowning in concentration while taking samples at the edge of a volcano, carefully excavating a fossil in the jungle with a smudge of dirt on my cheek. My smile, she always said, brighter than the sunrise. One night, in our tent in Antarctica, I got an email from Chloe. The only attachment was a commendation list for the Mojave Preservation Project. My name was at the top, followed immediately by Maya's. The body of the email contained a single photograph. Chloe standing alone in front of an observatory in Greenland, the Aurora Borealis painting the sky behind her. On her face was a serene and peaceful smile. I felt a warmth at my back as a sleepy Maya wrapped her arms around my waist. I had a nightmare that you threw my favorite rock samples into the Arctic Ocean, she mumbled into my shirt. You owe me. I smiled, closed my laptop and turned to hold her. Moonlight filtered through the canvas of the tent, glinting softly on the ring Maya had given me. The memory of the vast desert sky swirled and transformed into the brilliant ribbon of the Milky Way above our heads. Maya murmured something in her sleep and pulled me closer. I held her close, listening to the raucous calls of the penguins returning to their rookery, a profound sense of peace settling over me. I remembered a video call with Chloe the day before. She had been standing under the Greenland sky, the lights dancing behind her. This is good, she had said. We both found where we belong. And she was right. Some people are destined to be their own sails, navigating the world alone. Others spend their lives searching for a safe harbor. How lucky I was to have found another ship ready to sail beside me through any storm toward a horizon wider and more beautiful than I had ever imagined.